Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the day off. It was a beautiful day. No Mets baseball. Was in a much better mood, but now you got to turn your mood quick because the Mets are going back to Milwaukee. And if you remember the last time the Mets made a trip to Milwaukee was Pete Alonso, Pete Alonso, Pete Alonso. And that fateful home run that kept his Mets career alive. Let's be real. Pete Alonso was not going to be a New York Met anymore if he got out in that spot and the Mets season ended there. But he hits the home run to put the Mets ahead in the ninth inning. I was at the Citi Field watch party. I've been to about 800 Mets games in my life. That watch party with 4,000 people was one of the great sports moments ever of the thousands of games that I've been to. It was unbelievable at Citi Field, just hugging strangers. Just the team looked dead in the water. It looked like the season was over, and then Alonso homered, and they were ahead, and you were like, what the heck just happened? From a guy who was the least clutch player in the team last year coming through in the biggest moment. Well, that was the past. The past is the past. The present's the present. And the Mets are very bad right now. But here's the reality. This team is still alive. As bad as this stretch has been, as bad as, they have made you feel as they fall 2.5 back and they're in the wild card, the last wild card spot, 3.5 games ahead still, the Cincinnati Reds. I hate to be corny. Everything's still right in front of them. And they still can control their own destiny here. And they're still very much alive and well. And this is a team that won 7 in a row. Yes, it's been ugly, losing 8 in their last 9, falling to 63 and 52 and losing first place as the Phillies have jumped ahead here. But you still have this in your hands with 47 games remaining. There's still plenty of time, and it starts this weekend, and it's going to be tough. You see the pitching matchups. You're going up against the best team in baseball. The Brewers are scorching hot, winning their last 6. They're 70 and 44, which is the most wins and the best record in the sport. It'll be Senga versus Woodruff, likely an opener versus Henderson tomorrow, and then unfortunately Frankie Montas, and then Manaea versus Priester. All have been really good for the Brewers as their pitching has been incredible. And you look at them on paper, you're like, who's pitching for them? You don't Mizorowski, who's on the IL. You know about Peralta. You know a little bit about Woodruff, but you don't know these other guys. They're not household names, but here they are, right at the top of the division and running this league right now. So shout out to the Brewers, man, a team that always finds himself in the conversation. We talked about the Cubs. We've talked about the Mets, the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Padres, but we don't really mention the Brewers ever. But here they are quietly as the best team in the entire sport. It's kind of hard to fathom, but they got a good young lineup, whether it's Yelich, Contreras, Vaughn, Churio's on the IL right now, but Terang, Collins, they have a bunch of just scrappy players, and that's what their bread and butter is. And David Stearns trying to bring that energy here. This Mets team doesn't feel that scrappy, and they've been hard to root for lately, and not a brand of baseball that we've enjoyed watching. But again, one win streak could flip that around. So get it going this weekend. And it's not going to be easy, but get this thing rolling here. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's do this. Let's go Mets. Come on, let's go. Speaking of 70 wins like the Brewers have, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the AA Mets, have reached 70 wins. The first team in double or AAA to reach 70 wins. They're at 70 and 33. And I wanted to show them love today because, we start to think about prospects, who's coming up, and we've talked about Sproat. We've talked about McLean. Tong is the one guy just lighting up the sport in AA. AA and these AA Binghamton Rumble Ponies have so many major pieces to this Mets organization. And we think about AAA and who might be the next hitter to come up, and they don't really have one in AAA. They traded away Gilbert. They still have a couple of guys in AAA, but veterans, a Joey Meneses, Pablo Reyes, but they don't really have that next phenom in AAA. But AA, man, obviously Luis Angel Acuna is in AAA, and I want to talk about him in a minute. But AA here, and the Rumble Ponies are the ones with a lot of promise. Not just Tong, obviously. Ryan Clifford, who leads AA in home runs, hitting 23 homers. Carson Bench, who we talked about yesterday, who is absolutely tearing the cover off the ball in AA. AA Mets, these Rumble Ponies have a ton of promise and prospects and guys that you start to think, all right, I could see them playing a part. Our guy, friend of the program, Nick LaRusso, having a pretty good year in AA. Jet Williams, the number 1 Mets overall prospect, having a good year in Double-A, 10 homers, 37 RBIs, a 389 on base. Nick Marabito is a riser in the Mets system. Not a lot of power, but 45 RBIs, a 350 OBP. So you go up and down that Double-A lineup, there is a lot of talent there. Clifford, Jet Williams, Marabito, LaRusso, Bench. There is a ton of talent in Double-A, and I think next year you're going to see some of these guys knocking on the door in Double-A for a spot in the big leagues, because some of those guys are going to be starting next year in Triple-A. And those are guys when David Stearns thinks about the offseason, he thinks about a Pete Alonso, and he thinks about, center field, and he looks at the infield situation. He's got a lot of guys knocking on that door in Double-A, some of them who might end up in Triple-A in September, and then who might end up fighting for a roster spot next year. I think Clifford's one of those guys. Benj is one of those guys. Jet Williams is a guy we've talked about for years now. He can be one of those guys. There is a lot of talent, and you can see why that team has won 70 games and why they're winning, because they're stacked, absolutely stacked with talent. And next year and the year after are going to be critical years in Mets development here, because we know, McClain lighting it up in AAA, Sproat as the pitchers in AAA, but the hitters in AA, along with the pitcher in Tong, are really the next ones that we're thinking about. Can the Mets go internal? Can they replace this guy internal? Can they do this? They're going to have to trade one of these infielders, which I'm about to talk about, but they got a lot of talent there, and those next year are going to be names to keep an eye on, and they need to open up a spot. And I think the move to open up a spot is, I really think the Mets missed out not trading Brett Baty. I don't think Brett Baty should be playing. And you look at his recent numbers and you look at his numbers in the season, they're very similar to what he's done in his whole career. And I know he's had moments, and I know there's ladies who love him, and I know there's some Mets fans who love him. He's a handsome fella, whatever it may be. But Ronnie Mauricio needs to play over Brett Baty. And even Mark Vientos needs to play over Brett Baty. And I'm sorry, Luis Angel Acuna should be here over Brett Baty. I think Luis Angel Acuna does more for your roster in terms of his elite defense and speed than Brett Baty does. Brett Baty has a sub 300 on base, 288. He's been brutal in the last couple of weeks. I mean, he has not had any more than a one-hit game in most of his games. He's down to 228, 288 on base, 11 homers, 35 RBIs, but he has really done nothing of late. And there needs to be some consistency with this lineup. And, Ronnie Mauricio needs to play against every right-handed pitcher. Enough not playing him against guys with good off-speed stuff. The only way he's going to hit the off-speed stuff is if he sees it. But listen, Brett Baty has just done nothing for you of late. Since July 23rd, one-hit game, 1 for 4, 1 for 4, 1 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 1, 1 for 2, 1 for 2, 0 for 3. It's just not cutting it. He's not doing enough to warrant him really getting playing time. And Jeff McNeil's hitting well enough that McNeil should play second. But I'm sorry. I'd like to see some days where it's Ronnie at third, McNeil at second, or Ronnie at second, and Vientos at third with Marte at DH. I just don't think there should be a spot for Brett Baty. Let me know in the comments what you think. Should Brett Baty get chances? I think he's making the Mets worse. And if you want to keep him on the bench, fine. But I think the Mets are better served with Acuna on this roster and the things that he does than starting Brett Baty 1 or 2 times a week. I just think he's a hole in the lineup. And you could hope for that big homer, that big hit from him. It just doesn't come often enough, and I think he's wasting a roster spot. And I think the Mets are better served this offseason finding a way to move on from Brett Baty. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you smash that thumbs up. Follow me at Jake Brown Live on all socials. We go live on TikTok every single day. Follow me on Twitter. That's my biggest platform. And subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Live. Scan this code right here. Become a Mets Daily Insider member. Dealing with a little tennis elbow. That's why we're wearing this. I'm getting old, playing a lot of pickleball lately. Hurting my elbow. But scan that. Become Mets Daily Insider. Just $5 a month. We'll be back on Monday. Mets, Brewers, take care of business. Find a way to take 2 out of 3. Hell, win a game at least. Do not get swept in Milwaukee. Maybe that trip to Milwaukee in the playoffs, maybe the Mets are a little rejuvenated going into this weekend Enjoy the series. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Appreciate your support. Thanks for watching Mets Daily, everybody. Have a good weekend.